Welcome to Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the changes and challenges we face and the great things that people are doing to make Greater Portland a fantastic place to live, work, and play. I'm Christina Egan, your host. Today, we're diving into municipal budgets, the challenges and the opportunities. We're exploring how cities manage their finances, prioritize their money, and how they're innovating to improve services that they deliver to all of their residents. Joining us today are two superstars in local government. We have Danielle West, the city manager of Portland, and Jerre Bryant, the city administrator of Westbrook. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi.
It's nice to have you back.
Thank you for having me back. I'm happy to be here.
And Jerre, welcome.
Thank you, Christina.
So good to have you. So, Jerre has long-standing experience in public administration and has been instrumental in shaping Westbrook's fiscal policies and initiatives. And Danielle, you have been the corporation counsel, meaning the chief lawyer for the city of Portland, as well as interim and now final city manager. You both have been managing the finances of each of your respective cities for a long time. So let's dive right in and ask you my first question, which is really about what your current budget situation is right now, because we're about to go right into budget season. You might already be in budget season. And Danielle, let's start with the city of Portland. What's going on there?
There's a lot going on in Portland. We have just done a workshop with the council in January where we talked about our big challenges that are facing the city, and about some things that are, not that may be helpful. Some of the challenges that we face, we are wrapping up our use of American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Those were federal monies that we received during COVID. Had a lot of significant placeholders in our budget that will no longer be able to be available. We had sort of weaned ourselves off of them over several years. We had a plan, but that's a significant issue facing the city. Additionally, we have our general assistance program, which makes up a significant portion of the city budget. It helps pay for all of our homelessness services, including addressing asylum seekers as well as the chronically and circumstantially homeless. We receive 70% reimbursement from the state through that program, and we still have a gap after that where it is, in previous years we've received an additional one-time funding amount of about $7 million, between 7 and 7.4 for the last 2 years, and that has helped the city significantly. We bear the brunt, I think, of the lion's share of the homeless issue throughout the region. And so being able to have that additional funding was a way in which to help us address that significant need. And that money is not guaranteed. It's one-time funds that we get through the legislative process. And so every year we're back up in Augusta asking for those necessary funds. And so those aren't a guarantee for us. And so that's another hole that we have that we're facing. Some other things, the Portland Public Schools is also facing some significant challenges due to the loss of those federal funds that I mentioned. So that impacts us as well. And then additionally, we've been talking a lot about healthcare costs and the significant increase that we're seeing in that. We've been told
for the benefits
for our benefits for our employees across the board. We've been told by our benefits administrator that we should be budgeting like a 10% increase at this point based on what we're seeing. We are self-insured, so we handle everything through ourselves, and we do have an administrator that works with us, but that means if we have a really big claim that we have to pay for that, and that is that can sometimes be very significant if it's a very big health claim for several employees. So we're trying to manage all of those things. Some additional, costs that we see going away. We have, you may have heard, we're developing a park along the waterfront, Portland Harbor Common. That was part of the Ocean Gateway Terminal, and there's what they call the queuing lanes where the cars would queue up for the ferry that was going to Nova Scotia. We have in recent years used those queuing lanes for parking because we have a significant parking need throughout the city. And so that was bringing revenue into the city. With the development of this park, which is wonderful, we're going to see about half of those parking spaces go away. And and so half of that revenue is going to go away. And it's not a huge hit for a large budget like ours, but it is still about $500,000, and it's something that, it's a revenue source that we are seeing decline. So those are some of the bigger ones. We also have a debt service that we have to pay for each year for our pension obligation bond. About 20 plus years ago, the state of Maine came knocking and told the city of Portland that it had some obligations that it had to meet and pay for. And so at that time, the council decided, with working with staff, to do that through a bond. And those payments that we have to pay for out of our operating budget have steadily increased over the years. And we have about 2 years left on that, and those are going to balloon and be very significant in these last 2 years. So these are all just really significant challenges that do, weigh heavily on our budget and things that we have to think about. Sort of the last one I'll mention is just staffing. Across the board, we have some significant staffing needs that we haven't been able to meet. And part of the issue there is that wages are an issue, and making sure that we can pay a competitive wage with the private sector, whether that be for commercial driver's license, people who hold those licenses, or we have a long-term care facility, the Barron Center, and a lot of technical, nursing, and other medical staff that work at that facility. And so making sure we can pay competitive wages has been very large across all departments, but those two come to mind specifically. And that has obviously an impact on our budget and causes us a lot of thoughts.
A lot of thoughts. Yeah, I mean, you shared a lot of drivers to the budget, some of which are within the city's control and some of which are not. What is the kind of the overall amount of money we're talking about average per year?
Of all the things I just mentioned?
No, of Portland's city budget overall.
Oh, for our city budget overall. Well, it depends on if you add, we have enterprise funds. And so our enterprise funds are funds that are used for specific services, like, for example, the Jetport or our stormwater program. If you add all of that in, it's $333 million budget.
Yeah, really big budget.
Yes.
And Jerre, you heard Danielle go through a long list of the drivers for the budget in Portland. What is similar, what's dissimilar in Westbrook, and what kind of magnitude budget are we looking at in Westbrook?
Well, I feel a lot better about my budget.
This is actually just therapy for you.
I was going to benefit from today, and I'd like to thank Danielle for that.
You're welcome.
Obviously, Portland has a lot of unique features as a central city, as the largest city in the region in the state, that really aren't as pronounced in Westbrook. Certainly, we're seeing things like general assistance expenses go up significantly. Fortunately, that is mitigated significantly by the state now funding 70% of the benefit costs. So it's still an increase, and it's a significant increase, but it also has a corresponding revenue that helps mitigate that. Some of the things that are no different is supporting your workforce, not just through the cost of benefits, but providing a competitive wage so you can fill positions. In the last 3 or 4 years, we have struggled filling all positions, critical positions, police and fire, public services, which is public works, for those types of needs. Right now, we are in very, very good shape. We have increased wage packages to try to keep better pace with the labor market, and we have done some other innovative features, like we used to require applicants coming into public works to have a commercial driver's license. That was a prerequisite. It's not out there.
Right.
So we now we actually have an in-house training program certified by the state, so we can bring people in and have them earn their commercial driver's license while in the first few months of employment. So that's an adaptation that we simply had to make. But certainly the wage packages have had to be enhanced in order to be competitive. and in order to fill positions. Right now, we're sitting in very good shape as far as that's concerned.
I'm going to interrupt for a second
Sure.
and just let each of you make a little public service announcement about the positions that you do have open, just for anyone who's listening. Are there positions that you want to tell people to apply for?
I will always tell them to apply, the police department, although we are at this moment, and Daniel's not going to want to hear this, we are at full staff.
Danielle, do you have some police positions open?
I have police positions open. Please apply over in Portland. If you don't need them in Westbrook, we could take some over there.
That's always a position that's challenging to fill, and it's a lengthy process. It's not quite
Yes.
as
Can't
quick
just walk in the
turnaround.
door. Yeah.
And requires, in most cases, a trip up to the Criminal Justice Academy for 18 weeks, and so that that's a challenge. Although right now things are working. We have put in a lateral entry program where basically there can be sign-on bonuses if you have experience, and more importantly, if you have Criminal Justice Academy certification. So literally, after a couple weeks of orientation, you can hit the road and be in patrol. So that's in very good shape right now. But we've also got to make sure we maintain our competitiveness from a wage standpoint.
Yeah.
And we've got right now 4 labor contracts under negotiation.
Yeah,
And-
it's hard out there right now. I think not only in the public sector but also the private sector. There's just been so
Absolutely.
much wage
Yep.
inflation,
Mhm.
and I think your budgets are feeling it, and also just makes it hard to attract people.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that we're probably going to be experiencing a reduction in our general revenue sharing this year. And
Can you explain for folks what that means?
there's not enough time to, but I will briefly. Basically, there are a number of factors that determine this is a percentage of the state sales and income tax that the state sends back to the municipalities on a formula basis. Number of factors in the formula. One of the key ones is the state's estimated valuation of your community. And I'm not going to say assessed valuation because it's not assessed valuation. It's just a market analysis.
Yep.
And a combination of growth, which we have
You've had in
successfully
Westbrook.
achieved,
Yep.
but real estate inflation, which is, it's great if your house is worth a lot more money than it was 10 years ago, but that doesn't necessarily increase your disposable income. And so the state captures that. The only time the municipality would capture that would literally be through a revaluation, which in most communities is every 5 to 10 years and usually is not a pleasant process. But the success we've had in development and growth has not kept pace with the inflation in the real estate market. So we're still looking at a losing formula for our share of municipal revenue sharing.
So you'll be getting less funds from the state
We're,
than
yeah, we're,
you
we're
have in the
looking at,
past.
these numbers are small compared to what Danielle is dealing with, but we're looking in that one category, a loss of about $450,000.
Yeah, and similarly, we're looking at the same, and it has impacts too, because it also causes other impacts in the budget for how much we pay for county tax, as well as our educational subsidy. So it's not only impacting what we're going to get for revenue sharing, it's also going to impact those other pieces of the budget. And so that is, I'm right with you, Jerry, that is a significant impact, another one on the city budget as well.
So we are, right now you're listening to Let's Connect, Greater Portland, a show about the issues we face in Greater Portland, the movers and shakers leading the way. And I have 2 of them here with me today, Jerre Bryant, the city administrator of Westbrook, and Danielle West, who is the city manager for the city of Portland. You can call in and join this conversation and ask questions of Jerre and Danielle at 780-4909. Again, that's 780-4909. Danielle, the way you were just talking about the budget sounds like a giant jigsaw puzzle, right? And you move one piece and actually it can affect another piece. And you're talking about some drivers, including how the state is reimbursing you and general assistance. And I want to come back to general assistance because that's been a really big deal. And Jerre, you mentioned it also. But before we do that, I want to hear about how your councils are thinking about priorities and how they're making those priorities real through your budget, because you've got a lot of different things, and Danielle, you described some things that you really don't have much control over. But then there are other things like a park, which you described, which is kind of an initiative of the city, a way to improve people's quality of life. And Jerre, you and former Mayor Mike Foley were so instrumental in bringing Rock Row to Westbrook. So things like that. So can you talk a little bit about how your city councils right now are thinking about what they have discretion over to kind of prioritize? Jerre, do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
We've over the past couple of years, we've had quite a bit of turnover on our council. I've got 4 councilors who are in the 3 to 4 year experience range, and it really changed the character of our council a little bit because we have, I would say, a more progressive, more assertive makeup of the council than we've had in previous years. So there is a lot of pressure both from the community and from some of the council leaders to try to be doing more and doing certain things better.
Yep.
And so that's going to play itself out this year in what's going to be yet another real tight budget year from a funding standpoint, looking at offsetting some in revenue losses. Certainly, you can't simply transfer a cost onto the property taxpayer because it reaches a point where it's unacceptable. And so that priority process is probably going to take place this year more than it has in recent years, only because a lot of the councilors have things on their agenda, whether it's environmental or social or economic, a lot of things that they really want to see done, or things that we're doing they want to see done better. So this year is going to be an interesting process. We'll also be working with a brand new mayor.
Yep.
So it'll be the process you ask about. I can't describe because we're just moving into it
Just
right now.
doing it, yeah.
And I think in recent years it's been more of a let the income levels drive what we're doing in the budget.
Yep.
And it's been very focused. And we had a series of years where we had little or no increase in the property tax rate. Last year that changed, and I think this year we're looking at a lot more challenges because I think there's a lot of identified priorities in areas where we have either haven't been involved previously or have been less involved than the current council would like to see.
So just kind of like boiling it down, it's like you've got some revenue losses.
Mm-hmm.
You also have a lot of clamors for more things to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Tough situation.
Yeah.
Danielle, you want to speak a little bit to how your council's thinking about prioritizing?
Yeah, I think similar to Jerre, I've had a shift in the council in the last probably 3 years. We are also a very progressive council now, and we do a goal setting at the beginning of the year, and that goal setting helps to educate our budget process. And that goal setting, the council identified goals to address climate change, to ensure that we were looking at equity and diversity. That was like their first goal, to address housing and homelessness issues, and then to look at community engagement. So there's a variety of things there. That goal-setting session, interestingly enough, happened before our budget workshop where we talked about all the challenges that I just mentioned. And so
Oh, boy.
it was almost like a level setting, I would say, that afterwards, where even one of the counselors expressed that and said, gosh, maybe we should have the budget workshop before we set our goals, because it makes it very difficult to look at these aspirational things that the council wants to do and try to incorporate them into the budget. With that said, I do use them, and my staff uses them, to really make sure that we're trying to deliver and address the goals that they've set. So can we do things either in, Parks and Rec or DPW, Department of Public Works, or some other department that would address those things, that would address climate change and diversity and equity, and how do we do that? So we try to use them to help educate us. We also, during that budget workshop, asked the council, what do you think the constituents of this city can handle in terms of a tax rate increase?
Yeah.
And so they gave us a range of 5%. Some went a little bit higher. There was
Including schools?
Yes, including the schools as well. So that's going to be a significant. We're going to have to really sort of hone in what we want to do. And one of the things I mentioned to them when they said that was, we can't be everything to everyone, and I think that's going to be the tough part about this. We have to make sure we're addressing all the various needs, which there are significant need across the board in the city, and address the council's goals, but do so in a way that is pretty tempered, because this year, given all those challenges we've been talking about, this year is going to be really tough. It's going to be tough to address it all.
So let's talk a little bit about one of those challenges that both of you mentioned, which is general assistance, which is a state law that requires municipalities to respond to people who are in need and provide housing and food and other kinds of support. So the state reimburses right now, it's 70%. Danielle, I'm going to start with you and just ask you to talk a little bit about how that general assistance requirement of the city impacted you in the last couple of years, given how many people have been experiencing homelessness.
It has impacted us significantly in the city of Portland, and the program, has very laudable goals. It's wonderful helping people. It has expanded because of a variety of reasons, circumstances that are beyond our control, including a pandemic and loss of jobs. Also, a significant influx of asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are also served by this program.
And of course are governed under national law.
Correct. And so they also, as you mentioned, Christina, they also have issues with when they can work. And so there's a work authorization period, which is like a waiting period that they have to wait before they can get out and work. That's 6 months. And so they're kind of in a holding pattern. And so how do we address that need through this general assistance program, which is, as you mentioned, an obligation on every municipality in the state to, within 24 hours, respond to individuals who are in need of the assistance you talked about, with shelter and food and medical assistance, those types of things. And so that has become a huge driver in the city's budget. Our social services line, which is one line in our Health and Human Services Department budget, is about $20 million. And we do get 70% reimbursement, which is great, but there's still a lot left that has to be addressed. And what I've seen over the last couple of years, and it has been difficult to budget for, is you don't know the number of people who are going to need it. And so you're trying to anticipate that. But for example, about a year and a half ago, we had about 100 asylum seekers arriving a week. Yeah. And I remember looking at my staff and saying, how are we going to pay for this, and how are we going to manage that? And so we had to open the exposition building, which is where the Portland Celtics play, and we had to use that as a facility for an emergency shelter. That all cost money. That cost money that was outside of what we had budgeted, and so it's a significant issue, and one in which we had to ask the state, and we're very thankful for our state delegation as well as the governor's office, ask for help and say, we need more money. We need to address this need. We asked communities like Westbrook and many others, we need more help. And it was to address that need in general. When you look across the state, there's very few municipalities. In fact, I think we're the last ones standing that operate municipal shelters. And there's a reason for that. they're
very expensive.
Very expensive and costly endeavors. And we have the Homeless Services Center. And we also recently opened, along with the Center for Regional Prosperity in the state, 166 Riverside, which houses asylum seekers. 166 Riverside serves about 180 people. And the Homeless Services Center, with the expanded capacity that I've asked the council to continue, serves 258 people. And we've been pretty close to capacity at both locations. Plus, we're still using a family shelter and some additional hotels. So there's just significant need, and it's all paid for and served through that general assistance program. And I know the legislature is looking at ways to make it better, which I think is great. One of the things I think municipalities across the board would advocate for is an increased reimbursement from 70 to 90% because of that need.
our region has been making that request of the legislature in order to try to increase the reimbursement rate. Especially, as you said, it's like so hard to predict. We've been hit by a pandemic. We've had asylum seekers show up that we didn't know were coming. Very hard to budget for that. Jerre, are you seeing a similar issue? I know not at the same scale as the city of Portland, but with your general assistance budget gap?
Yes. Basically, I think one of the one of the real challenges, and Portland's been the poster child for this certainly, is that the whole concept of the general assistance program never contemplated the type of needs that we were going to see as a result of a number of factors, but certainly people arriving in the country or in the state, in the city, that were legally prohibited from working.
But legally able to be here.
But yes.
So aren't able to support themselves.
And
yeah.
you could see an economic downturn coming, and you could plan for that.
Yeah.
This was something that really caught us all off guard, and there's some adaptation being considered now, but really the general assistance program and structure is just not built to handle the types of needs that we're presented with and the volatility of that need demand. And it's not just straight financial assistance. It's capacity for housing is or shelters, whichever you want to category you want to consider, wasn't there. And to try to create that immediately, the substitute were hotels. Mm-hmm. Now, hotels, number one, were very expensive and really didn't provide the environment, the services, the infrastructure that you needed to service a population that had lots of needs, healthcare needs, behavioral issues, pure economic issues. And so we weren't in any way prepared on a statewide basis to deal with that because the programs that we had didn't contemplate that type of demand.
Jerre, we're getting towards the end, and I want the two of you to share a little bit of wisdom with other municipalities. Jerre, you're a veteran of managing these budgets coming from the city of South Portland before Westbrook, and Danielle, you've been at this for a long time with a very complicated set of factors. If you were to advise other municipalities on what to look out for or what you've learned, what would you say? This is kind of a lightning round.
I think that municipalities have to have good planning and good discipline in putting together their financial plans. And I know we're in an environment where you're responding to need, you're responding to demands, you're responding to requests, but basically it's got to be better managed and better controlled from a growth and adaptability standpoint. And it's easy to right now, everybody's doing everything they can to deal with housing. But in 2 or 3 years, it's good.
Could be something else.
A whole different issue.
Is the pandemic and homelessness, housing.
So that municipalities aren't nimble, and when they try to be, they get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And they get into a position where they simply, either they create a financial cliff where they fund a few programs with one-time money, that one-time money goes away, and either you take away a service that was needed in the beginning, obviously, or you transfer that generally onto the property tax. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have, is planning the operations and expenditure side while trying to keep it relative to what our resources are.
Mm-hmm. You both have such challenging jobs. I'm so grateful to the both of you for being here today and sharing what's going on as you're diving into budget season in both Westbrook and the city of Portland. I want to thank you for being here and for sharing your experience. And I also want to thank Anella, who is our sound engineer at WMPG, who collaborates with the Greater Portland Council of Governments in producing the show. And you can reach us on Instagram at Let's Connect Radio. Join us next week for another conversation about the great work that's happening in our communities. And until then, be kind to yourself and to one another. I'm Christine Egan. See you next time on Let's Connect Greater Portland.